What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to a Midwest Family. As you can see behind me, we got the wife's car in here today. I've already started it. I wasn't going to really do a video on it, but I decided I was going to. Couldn't find a whole lot of information on this project online and the research I was able to do, but we are doing a rack and pinion on the wife's 2013 Ford Edge. It's the SLE. It's not electric. This is the hydraulic steering. I did find some information saying you could take this out without dropping the subframe. I fought with it for I think 4 hours last night before 4 or 5 hours last night before I decided to just drop the subframe. I didn't want to do it. In hindsight, I should have just started that to begin with, and I probably would have been done. But this is a pain in the butt to get to. I was told that if you take these, they're little like star nuts or bolts on there. If you took the star bolts off, you could pull this off. This is where the steering wheel attaches. You could pull this off and you'd have enough room to pull the unit out without pulling off the subframe. Obviously I wasn't able to do that. So I ended up playing with this for several hours last night before I decided to just pull the subframe off. Obviously we got the new one here. It comes with the inner tie rods. You have to take this hose fitting off the old one and put it on the new one. There's a banjo bolt here. I believe that's the supply line. And banjo bolts right there. So the new one did not come with new brass crush washers, so I guess I'm going to reuse the old ones. It did come with a new O-ring for this fitting. There's an O-ring on the end of it, so I'll have to replace that. I bought the parts from Napa. It still has the Ford Motor Company stamp. It's upside down, but it's still a Ford part, but it's rebuilt. I'm not a fan of rebuilds, but it seems to be pretty much all you can get. So here's the subframe. In hindsight, it sounds a lot harder than what it actually was to take off. There was a bolt here, a bolt here, and a bolt back here. So there's 3 on each side, and then over here. You have to disconnect the lower ball joints on both sides. I disconnected the sway bar. I bought new sway bar ends. Since I'm this far into it, I'm just going to replace all the rubber bushings on this. So I got new ends, and I bought new bushings for the sway bar here. There's a couple hose bolts here and there that you got to do from underneath. Kind of show you what's going on underneath here. So underneath, you have to drop the exhaust. You have to support the car back far enough that you can get to that back bolt here where the control arm is on both sides. But so there's the steering that just slides in there, and then there's a nut or a bolt that goes through there. I'll show you that when I go put it back together. There's that hose right there. You had to take those two clamps off right there. But here's that. So there's one. You got the one in the back, the middle one, and then the front one right there underneath the bumper. So it would have been a whole lot easier and time saving if you just dropped the subframe right off the get-go. Like I said, it wasn't that bad. It just sounds daunting. But I'm gonna get the new rack and pinion put on the subframe, change out the bushings, and we'll catch you in a minute, and I'll give you an update. Stick with us. Alright, so we got the sway bar bushings on. We mounted the rack and pinion. If you're doing the sway bar bushings, do those before the rack and pinion, because this bolt back here is kind of in the way. This steering box here is kind of in the way to get to that bolt. But here's the old ones. They don't look bad, but since I'm this far into it, I'm just replacing them. The slit goes to the back of the vehicle, so they go like this. That's the bushing box I got from Napa. There's 2 bolts on each bushing. Over here and right there. Those have blue thread locker on them. And then the 4 bolts that hold the rack on. That one, this one, and that one. Those 4 have thread locker on them. We're over here doing the sway bar ends. These are the old ones. Bubble machine. So here's the new one next to the old one. The new one looks a little beefier. So the old ones have a hex end in them, which is I think it's a 4. I think that's a 6 millimeter. But you got to get this Allen key in there to hold it, and then you got to get this holding nut off of there, which was an 18 millimeter. Obviously that one didn't want to come off, so I had to cut it off. This one here came off okay. The other side I'll have to cut off because it's stuck. But the new one has the hex nut on it, so you can put a wrench on there instead of a Allen in there. So yeah, but progress. I'll get these put on there, clean them over, and then I think we'll get that fitting put back on, and then we'll be ready to go back under the car. So hang tight. Alright, so we got the tie rod in, or the sway bar ends put on both sides. There's that other one. New bushings. We got our fitting put back in. There is a new O-ring that came with this. There's an O-ring at the end of this fitting, so be sure to change the O-ring out. There's a plug right here for the power steering line to connect to, and then there's that one. So I believe we are ready to put it back underneath the car. Unless I forgot something. Since I did this last night at like midnight, that's quite possible. But, old one, I'll put the tie rods on after it's put back on. Those will be pretty easy to do. So, the sway bar end the sway bar ends, these pieces here that connect to the sway bar, that's Napa's part number, same on each side. At least those are the numbers I'm using. So obviously they're not factory Ford parts, but I've usually had fairly decent luck with the Napa product. So, and he's the store that's in town. Shout out to my boy Steve at Napa. But we're gonna get this wheeled under there and try to make the love connection. Yeah, buddy. Alright guys, so we got the subframe put back under. It was actually pretty easy. I ended up he's got his goggles on, being safe. I wheeled it underneath, tilted the front up, stuck it up in the bumper, and then just jacked it up, and it popped right into place. So underneath you have that front bolt right there. You have the middle one right here, and then you have the back one right here, which is under. It's got this like 3-plate here. So that's the bolt that holds that on. There's this like brace bar right here, and then there's a bolt that goes through here. With this one has blue Loctite on it. None of the other ones had Loctite on it. So yeah, this is where we're at. You do have to take that engine mount off. There's a heat shield right there that I have to put on. There's another heat shield I forgot to do when it was down, so I'll have to do it in a little bit. I'll show you that one. But we are trucking along. So we'll get that Loctited. We'll get all these tight, and then we'll get the heat shields put on, and we'll get back to you in a minute. Alright, so under the car we have this right here is a heat shield. There's 2 bolts right there and right there. Those are M8. Those are 8mm heads. And then there's a hose band clamp. Right there, right there, and right there. Those are M10 drive nuts. So now we need to get our steering and all that put back on. I pushed the hose on. That's probably got to come back off, but we're going to take that rubber piece off, get our steering pushed back on, and then we'll hook up our banjo supply line right here. That goes over the drive shaft. It comes over here and hooks out of there. Alright guys, so we got the heat shields on. When you drop the subframe on the passenger side, there's this hose here. You'll have to remove this clamp. There's another clamp. Right there. There's two heat shields under here. There's one right there next to the motor mount that you have to undo, and then there's another one right there, which that one there's actually pretty easy to get to from underneath. Two M8 or there's two 8mm bolts on that one. These two nuts here were 10s. We got the exhaust back on. When you go to drop the exhaust hanger bush grommet here, rubber isolator, if you got some penetrating oil or white lithium grease, I have some white lithium grease, so I sprayed it in there, and those rubber isolator just pops right off. So we got the new rack pinion, the steering bar right there that's connected to the steering wheel, the banjo bolt right there, that black hose with the clamp on it, and it's got a clamp right there, and then there's a couple clamps over there. You can see the one there, and then there's another one back there you can't see from this angle. But before we started this project, I guess I strapped the steering wheel down with the seat belt. Just went around it twice, so the steering wheel didn't move. But we got all the bushing ends on and all that stuff, and we're getting ready to do the tie rods, the outer tie rods. So on the outer tie rods, you take a wrench, hold this nut, there's a flat piece right here, you can put a wrench there, loosen this one, and then you count the turns on your outer rod, and then just turn it in the same amount when you put it back on. So that's what we're going to do next. So I'm going to get this loosened up, get that on, get the new ones put on, because I got new ones, and then we'll catch you in a bit. Alright, so we're on the driver's side. We got the new outer tie rod put on. I counted the old one, the turns off the old one, and it was 20 turns. The jam nut you do have to take off and reuse. So put the jam nut on, put some copper anti-seize on the shaft here, put 20 turns on the new one. The new ones also have grease zerks on them. Torqued her down, put the key in, driver's side is done. So now we'll count the turns off of the passenger side and do that one. Alright, we got the passenger side outer tie rod put on. It's got it clipped. This one was 19 turns. We got the sway bar new ends all put on. Like I said, I put anti-seize on the threaded rod before I screwed on the outer tie rod. And these new ones have grease zerks on them, so they're greasable. I was getting ready to turn it on, and there's right, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a that banjo bolt that was right there. Has two brass washers on it, one on each side of the fitting. Well, the one washer fell off. It fell off and was laying right next to the sway bar bushing. So I had to take that back apart. And stupid me, I already put steering oil in it. So I was dripping oil all over the place. But yeah. We're gonna fire up and look for leaks, I guess. So I'm gonna do my seat belt contraption here. We got oil, car's running. I don't see any major drips anyway. So far so good. We're gonna turn the steering wheel a little bit. Nice and slow. Check our fluid. Still got some in there. We'll turn it all the way to the right. We still got some fluid in there. Still don't see no drippies. So I'm gonna just run this wheel back and forth for a little while. Alright, so we ran her for a little while, ran the wheel back and forth. I'm pretty sure we got all the air bubbles out of the line. That banjo bolt had a slow leak, so I tightened it up and I think it stopped. So we'll keep an eye on that. But for the majority of this project is kind of done. On the passenger side, there's this inner plastic wheel well that I got loose. It's got these plastic clips in there. So when they're pushed in, the little tab goes down and it pushes the ends out, and then when you pull that center tab out, it retracts, and then you can pull the pins out. So we're gonna pop these back in just like that. I don't. That's a good question. I don't know.
Do you have to take lessons for those?
No.
Or not?
Not really.
Is this what this one's
All right. So we got those tabs pushed back in. Next up is this little air dam piece that was underneath the front bumper. I had to take that off to give more room for the subframe to come down. So you'll probably have to take that off. So we're gonna get that popped up there. Kind of goes right in front there along the front edge. So I'll get that put up and show you guys what it looks like when that's up. That plastic air dam piece is held on by these little tiny screws. They're they're like a 5.5 millimeter roughly. So we'll get that put on and show you what it looks like. Alright, so we got that plastic air piece put on. Goes all the way to the other side. It had 6 little bolts. Someone took it apart before me and lost some of the clips. There's I think 3 of those push pins that are missing. Here, here, and another one over here. So that might have to mess with that. Yeah.
Dad, look at my phone.
But
That's funny.
the whole point of this project was there was a clunk, a popping sound coming from what sounded like underneath here. It seems to have gone away, but there's still a little popping. So I believe something broke in my strut. So since obviously doing this stuff you need to do a front end alignment, I'm gonna put new struts on and get a front end alignment done. But for the time being, I think we're gonna wrap this project up. The rack and pinion was kind of, it wasn't like super hard, but I think you have to drop the subframe. If you drop the subframe just right off the get-go, you'd save a lot of time. I started Friday when I got home from work a little after, so I started about 5 o'clock. I called it a night at about 11:30, and I think it was about 10 o'clock I said screw it, and that's when I pulled the subframe down. So it took about an hour or so to pull the subframe down. Once the subframe was down, you saw how easy it was to get to everything. Then it took another hour or so to get the subframe back up and get all the other stuff put together. Was another few hours. So as it sits, I'm probably what time is it? So as of right now, I think I'm sitting at about 13 hours into this project. It's ready to get the tires put on and drive it to a front end alignment. But like I said, I'm going to replace both front struts. Just because I think that one side's going bad, and I'm just going to do them both, and then hopefully we're going to be good for a while. But I think we're going to get some stuff picked up. Today's Sunday, so parts stores. I ordered the struts yesterday morning, and they're supposed to be in tomorrow on Monday. So I'll probably pull the struts off today yet, so I'm ready to just pop the new ones in and then run this to an alignment shop and get that done. Yeah. Oh, it's about a quart. Took about a quart of power steering fluid to fill it back up after we got all the bubbles and stuff out. So there's that. But we're gonna end it with that. Really appreciate you guys sticking around and watching. Hope you stick around for the next video, probably struts. But we'll see you then. Stay safe. See you in a bit. Peace.